Oh boy, the Miami Dolphins could get bad news when it comes to Anthony Weaver. I am Nick Roloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports because, well, after initially making a video at the end of last week detailing how it was good news that Weaver would likely stay the defensive coordinator as the Miami Dolphins at least one more season, a new report from Tom Pelissero indicates that may not actually be the case. We'll break down that report and everything on today's show. But make sure you are subscribed because we are putting out daily content on the Miami Dolphins. Sometimes it's 2 videos a day, sometimes it's 1, but we are giving you a video every single day. And we are actually starting a week-long sub battle against a division rival. That is the New England Patriots at Patriots Today. So hit that sub button. We'll be live as well on Tuesday afternoon, so do not miss a thing. Let's get into the Tom Pelissero report because this came in early on Monday morning that the Saints are bringing in Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver for a second interview for their head coaching job. Weaver apparently impressed them in multiple interviews, but also was impressive when interviewing for head coaching opportunities in Washington and Atlanta next season, and is in the final round once again as a potential head coach candidate. And if he ultimately does get hired by the New Orleans Saints, this may be an absolute disaster because Weaver, I thought, did an excellent job as DC in Miami year one, taking over for Vic Fangio. And I thought he is someone that you can really start to build this defense on as a play caller, as a schematic point of view. But if he ultimately leaves, this could be the 4th defensive coordinator for the Dolphins in 4 years. I think continuity is as important as any aspect in the NFL. Think about it. It ultimately did not lead to a title. The Lions came up short this season. But they have had Aaron Glenn. They have had Ben Johnson as their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, underneath Dan Campbell for the past 2 or 3 years. And I don't think that's a surprise when you think of the Lions having a top defense, a top offense, one of the top teams in the NFC and the NFL as a whole. When you have the same scheme, the same coaching staff at the top level at least, returning year after year, it's only going to help you stabilize your culture, your locker room, to have more success. And like I mentioned, if Weaver left, this upcoming season in 2025 would be the 4th defensive coordinator Miami would have under Mike McDaniel, Boyer, Fangio, Weaver, and then whoever the 4th person would be. That is not sustainable if you want to have a good side of the field on defense in the National Football League. And when you think of Weaver's first season, you could only be impressed with what he was able to do with this defensive unit. I mean, they were a top 10 defense this year. Sure, they lacked in getting after the quarterback and taking the ball away, arguably the 2 most important things in terms of being able to be a top-tier defense, but they were able to overcome those deficiencies and still be able to get on the field and off the field relatively quick. I mean, they were only giving up 12 points or 21.4 points per game. That's top half in football. The yardage per game was tremendous and rushing as well as passing. They were one of the top 5 pass defending units in the NFL. And the part that was the most impressive is the opponent third down conversion rate. When you get to that 3rd down and 7, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 8, can you get off the football field? That is the most key thing for defense. Well, guess what, folks? They were 5th in the NFL this past season. So I'd like to see this team and unit continue to build with Anthony Weaver as the play caller and the leader on that defensive side of the field, especially when your head coach does absolutely nothing with the defense. But before we talk more about him potentially leaving and going to the New Orleans Saints, what will he do? Will he stay or will he leave? Predict it for me down in the comment section. Type S if you think Weaver stays. Type L if you think he leaves. I need him to stay. If you can't tell in the first portion of this video, I am very bullish. I am very high on Anthony Weaver's ability. And sure, it may be just for one more season, because if Weaver has another strong season as the Dolphins defensive coordinator in 2025 and he doesn't get the Saints job, he'll likely be one of the top 2 or 3 candidates in next year's cycle, which could be beneficial to you if you struggle again, and Weaver ultimately is just the replacement for Mike McDaniel, but that is neither here nor there. This is more or less thinking that he could be leaving your organization in the next 2 years. And the reason why I think it's so necessary for Weaver to be in this organization for another year is because I do not want to overhaul the scheme from a defensive standpoint yet again. You saw a change from Boyer to Fangio. You saw a change from Fangio to Weaver. And having these players that keep on returning, like a Chop Robinson, a Jalen Phillips, a Bradley Chubb, a Jalen Ramsey, the guys that have been here for a while, having them consistently have to pick up a new scheme and system, new verbiage, new lingo, is not helpful, and it will cause you to get off to a slow start defensively. Plus, if you keep Weaver around for another year, he will help you in free agency identify who could help this team at a bargain level in free agency, because Weaver comes in, he inherits half of the defense. Yeah, they make some minuscule signings out there, like a Calais Campbell, like a Jordan Brooks, and you get excited about those guys coming in. Who knows how much he was involved in signing Poyer, letting Jones, Elliott go, as well as Van Ginkel. Like, I don't know, but knowing that Weaver can help the front office identify who they should target in free agency would bring me a very calming presence if he was still in the building. And I do want to go back and reference this quote a week ago that Jeff Darlington of ESPN dropped when on the Dive Bar Pod, who does a great job. Darlington basically said that he's not leaving. He said, say the Bears come to him pretty hard. The Dolphins could probably make it right and give him a pay bump and keep him around. I think he wants to be in Miami. Weaver's very happy. It's certainly night and day different than Vic Fangio, who couldn't get out fast enough. Weaver's very happy, really enjoys working with Mike McDaniel, loves South Florida. I would say he'd be hard-pressed to leave. And that was in reference to him leaving Miami to go to Chicago when asked by the Dive Bar Pod if he could be hired as the Bears' next head coach. But is that going to be the same case if the New Orleans Saints ultimately give him the opportunity to become their next head coach? Because in Chicago, it's a lot different. Ownership, question mark, weather. Yeah, the team is better than New Orleans. It's a better situation. But with the Saints, you're playing a dome. You're in New Orleans. You don't have a good situation, so it might actually buy you more time to try to turn things around as a head coach. Meanwhile, in Chicago, if you come out and struggle in the first year, 2 years, they might get rid of you as quick as they possibly can. So that might change in terms of Anthony Weaver's mind of how he values a job. Maybe he values the New Orleans job higher than the Chicago job and would be willing to leave Miami to go be the Saints head coach. We'll talk about the potential fit in New Orleans for Anthony Weaver in just a second. But we are sponsored by Game Time, the best ticketing app out there. And if you want to go see a live event, whether it's a sporting event, comedy show, concert, theater, make sure you get your tickets with Game Time. It's the easiest way to purchase your tickets, and it's the only way I buy my tickets. When I went to Timberwolves Mavericks on Christmas Day in the NBA basketball world, I bought my tickets with Game Time. They have so many great features that make it easy, one of them being Game Time Picks. It curates to make it easier to find better value for tickets to all type of events. Like I mentioned, it doesn't matter what it is, sports, concert, comedy show, theater, but Game Time Picks will filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on the great seats. And all-in pricing is awesome as well. When you toggle that feature, it shows you the total price of your ticket up front with no surprise fees at checkout. It actually has the lowest price guaranteed as well. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a different service having a cheaper ticket in that same exact row, same exact session for that same exact event. So get started with Game Time today. Download the app and use code ChatSports when signing up to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, first purchase only, but use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It is game time. All right, when you go over to the defensive part of things, are they going to stay defense? Because I am a little bit skeptical. I am. I don't know if the Saints are going to be willing to go back to hiring a defensive-minded head coach. They obviously had Sean Payton there for such an extended period of time, an offensive-minded guy. And then he leaves. They move off of him. They ultimately hire Dennis Allen to be the replacement, and it was just not good in New Orleans from 22, 23 in this past season, ultimately leading him to be fired halfway through the year. So to me, he might actually try to shift back to the offensive-minded head coaches. But then you really actually dive into things here, and you're like, well, who are they interviewing for a second time in person? Because that's really the final list for this head coaching job, right? Well, it's not that offensive minded, and it's actually more defensive minded. The only offensive guy up here is Mike Kafka, the New York Giants offensive coordinator. And then you got Anthony Weaver, obviously from Miami, and then Aaron Glenn, the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator, as he is more free to go into his coaching search. And I would expect the head coaching market to move very, very quickly this week because the top two candidates potentially out there are both Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. The Detroit Lions offensive and defensive coordinator. And with them out of the postseason, they now can go interview in person, which means teams may have decisions, which means they can either move on to their B candidates, their C candidates, or get their guy. And I would also expect, by the way, Mike McCarthy of the New Orleans Saints to be added to this interview list as a top 4 option. I think New Orleans is choosing between these 3 and then added Mike McCarthy as a 4th guy, maybe Joe Brady, but if they want to hire someone soon, they might go in a different direction because Brady's still going on with Buffalo. So predict it for me. Will the Saints hire Anthony Weaver? Type Y for yes or type N for no. This is not what you want to happen. Just as a prediction, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. All right, sorry for the cut. We had to refilm since Ben Johnson was ultimately hired by the Chicago Bears earlier this afternoon. But I do expect Anthony Weaver to actually stay with the Miami Dolphins. And now the Bears offer that he had apparently was not even on the table because he didn't make it to the second round interviews. Plus, it seems like they were eyeing Ben Johnson the entire time. But I do think he will ultimately stay in New Orleans, especially after this Ben Johnson hire by Chicago, because to me there was only really one pathway where Anthony Weaver became the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints, and that is now gone. Because with Ben Johnson heading to Chicago, the Saints, who are obviously the team linked to Anthony Weaver here, still have their 2 top options available. My people have told me that Aaron Glenn is the clear-cut favorite for the Saints job, at least in their own building. Now, the Jets really want Aaron Glenn as well, so Glenn is a hot commodity between New Orleans and New York. But if the Saints end up missing out on Glenn, they could have pivoted to Mike McCarthy, and they still may pivot to Mike McCarthy. And since the Bears, who are heavily linked to McCarthy, now have Ben Johnson, it is very possible to where the Anthony Weavers of the world in here is going to end up coming back to Miami because the Saints could either just grab Glenn or McCarthy. Now, maybe there's a world where the Las Vegas Raiders get Mike McCarthy and the Jets get Aaron Glenn, and then it's just like, oh, well, maybe Anthony Weaver is available for the New Orleans Saints. But after Ben Johnson was officially hired by the Chicago Bears, to me it felt very clear and obvious that we will have Weaver next season because I think the Saints will get one of their 2 guys, either in the terms of McCarthy or Aaron Glenn. And I don't think Anthony Weaver is a candidate whatsoever for any of the other openings like Dallas or New York if they don't get Glenn, or if you even talk about the Las Vegas Raiders as well. So looks like Anthony Weaver is going to stay in Miami, which is music to my ears because, well, you heard me say it throughout the entire show. I want him back for at least a second season. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we bring you content every single day. We'll have a video out tomorrow morning as well as being live on Tuesday afternoon. So hit that sub button because we're bringing you the latest news, rumors, and everything you need to know surrounding the Miami Dolphins. So go join the channel today.